When I settled into this new community, I anticipated tranquility and silence, not an all-out battle with an HOA that believed they controlled me. From the second I arrived with my Porsche, Karen, the self-appointed vice president, determined she despised me. She hit me with penalties, intimidated me, and declared I didn't belong there. But situations spiraled out of hand quickly. It began with intimidation, then destruction, and ultimately they even dispatched phony HOA officers to confiscate my vehicle. What they weren't aware of was that I'm a U.S. Marshal and I don't appreciate threats. Before we begin, comment which nation you're watching from. Let's see how widespread this story reaches. I had recently relocated to Oakfield Estates, a community that appeared like the image of suburban tranquility. Well, maintained lawns, orderly mailboxes, children on bicycles, everything seemed flawless. But flawless is frequently a facade, and I discovered that the difficult way. The initial person I encountered was Sandra Hall, the HOA vice president. She presented herself with a grin so artificial it should have included a warning notice. "We maintain standards here," she stated, studying me like I was already trouble. From that instant, she despised me. Why? Because she couldn't dominate me. The penalties began almost instantly. The first citation claimed my Porsche was positioned incorrectly. I had parked it in my personal driveway. The second was for overgrown grass height. I had mowed it 2 days earlier. Then came garbage containers left outside too long, despite pulling them in within an hour of collection. I attempted reasoning at the following HOA meeting. Sandra occupied the head of the table, surrounded by her devoted board members. I dropped the pile of penalties before her. "Sandra, I'm unsure what scheme you're running, but I've obeyed every regulation. These penalties are fraudulent." She sneered, tapping her pen. "Regulations are regulations. If you cannot manage them, perhaps this community isn't suitable for you." There it was, the intimidation disguised as guidance. I maintained my composure, but internally, I understood this wouldn't cease. A week afterward, the harassment intensified. One morning, I stepped outside to leave for work and froze. My tires were punctured, every single one. A jagged slice through the sidewalls and a message tucked beneath the windshield wiper. Next time we confiscate it, my blood chilled. This wasn't about garbage containers or grass anymore. This was intimidation, criminal, calculated, and personal. I captured photos, contacted the sheriff's department, and submitted a report. But I knew the HOA had connections in dark places, and Sandra would act innocent. Still, that message revealed everything I needed to understand. Sandra and her small empire wouldn't retreat until they destroyed me or forced me away. What Sandra wasn't aware of was that I'd been prepared for people like her. I don't frighten easily, and I don't surrender, but even I couldn't anticipate just how extreme she would become. I wasn't going to allow the tire puncturing to pass. I recorded everything, close-up shots of the cuts, the message under the wiper, timestamps from my doorbell camera. I submitted a police report with Deputy Morales and provided the photos. He treated the evidence seriously, but cautioned, "These individuals aren't amateurs if they're escalating. Keep your cameras operating." I did. At the next HOA meeting, I placed the police report and photographs on the table. Sandra Hall sat there like she controlled the room, lips twisted in that same artificial smile. "Someone punctured your tires. That's terrible," she said, "but you're creating enemies by confronting neighbors, or you're creating victims by ignoring the situation." I responded. The room became silent. A few people shifted, eyes downward. I noticed an older neighbor's slight nod. Fear was a language everyone in that room comprehended. Sandra didn't deny anything. She weaponized uncertainty. I strengthened my security, motion lights, additional cameras positioned at the driveway, cloud storage. The cameras weren't about paranoia, they were protection. They would reveal the truth if Sandra's small empire attempted to hide its actions. This time, the action came in broad daylight, at 2:14 p.m. My front camera alerted my phone, motion detected. I checked the feed and felt the familiar instinctive surge. Headlights, a white SUV waiting in my driveway. 3 men exited wearing reflective vests with bold letters printed on the back, HOA Security, One carried a heavy tow chain and toolbox. They didn't hesitate. They approached the Porsche like it belonged to them, removing the license plate, acting as if to attach a wheel clamp and connect the car to a flatbed. No knock, no inquiries, just practiced efficiency. I walked onto the porch. My hands were behind my back, fingers wrapped around the grip of a service pistol I keep concealed there, a precaution, not a provocation. I wasn't displaying it yet. I approached slowly and deliberately, eyes on the men. They were halfway through attaching the towing equipment. "Hey," I said, loud enough to pierce the afternoon. Two heads turned up. The lead man rotated, gave a smirk that was meant to be authority. "Official HOA enforcement. You're in violation. We're seizing the vehicle." "Under what authority?" I asked. I kept my voice steady. I kept walking. The sound of my boots on the porch step created a small, uncomfortable rhythm in the moment. One of the men displayed a laminated badge. Cheap lamination, clip-on, fake, even to someone glancing in the sun. I stopped 3 steps from them and reached behind my back. I didn't brandish. I revealed slowly the badge clipped inside my jacket and the U.S. Marshal star at my waist. The smiles disappeared. My free hand adjusted the jacket just enough so the grip of the pistol was visible in the hollow of my palm, tucked against my back. It was a quiet, unmistakable message. I was armed, trained, and not deceived. They laughed initially, dismissive, arrogant. "You're not a cop." The one with the tow chain scoffed. "This is HOA business. Test me," I said. My voice was quiet but firm. The lead man hesitated. The second man tightened the tow apparatus like a dog on a leash. Tension mounted the way a pulled wire hums before it breaks. Behind them, my driveway camera kept recording. Why? Dangle, high definition, time-stamped. Every motion, every exchange, every cheap laminated badge was being captured. The men could have retreated. They could have pretended nothing occurred. Instead, they glanced at each other, fingers twitching on tools. The scene had moved beyond penalties and notes. The theft was in progress, and whatever happened next would be on camera. I told them once, calm and low, "Drop the tools, walk away now." They laughed again, and that laugh was the last thing anyone would get to keep. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The lead man, crowbar gleaming in the sun, took a step forward like he owned the driveway. I didn't hesitate. Training and instinct cut cleaner than anger. The thug swung the crowbar at my ribs. It was a wide, committed strike meant to disable. I moved into it, did what U.S. Marshals drill until it's muscle memory, a deflect, a turn, and a single controlled shot aimed to stop the attack without killing. He went down hard, groaning, not gasping. The shot hit the fleshy part of his thigh, blood, but not fatal. It bought me time. The other two rushed in, weapons and bravado. That's when the rest of my training took over. No theatrics, efficient clinical force. I closed distance, used a wrist lock to twist one man's arm behind his back until it snapped with a clean, awful crack. He cried out and collapsed. The third lunged. I planted a shoulder, drove him back, and slammed his head into the pavement until he stopped fighting. It was over in seconds that felt like minutes. My driveway camera had everything. Timestamps, audio, high-definition close-ups of the laminated badges and the HOA security vests. Neighbors poured into the street, phones up, eyes wide. The man I'd put down was screaming. The other two were curled and bleeding. Sheriff Morale's cruiser arrived 3 minutes later, lights cutting the noon glare. Deputies leaped to the scene, secured the suspects, and called medics. I presented my Marshal credentials without drama. They already had the footage streaming on an officer's tablet. The deputies handcuffed the 3 men, seized crowbars, tow chains, fake badges, and the jackets. They treated the wounded. One required surgery on a severed femoral branch, but survived. The sheriff's investigators rushed up my driveway and watched the playback on my cloud backup. Every frame was smoking evidence. Within 48 hours, the paper trail opened. Bank transfers, Venmo payments, and text threads tied the hires to Sandra Hall, the HOA vice president, handle the Porsche. Teach him to leave, read one message. Sandra's signature matched invoices for the men's cash payments. The district attorney filed a stack of charges: attempted grand theft auto, impersonating law enforcement, assault with a deadly weapon, and conspiracy to commit a felony. The three thugs were indicted. Sandra was arrested on solicitation and conspiracy counts. At trial, the video was merciless. Neighbors testified under oath about the penalties, the slashed tires, and Sandra's private threats. The jury didn't deliberate long. Sandra was convicted of conspiracy, solicitation, and HOA fraud. She was sentenced to 30 months in state prison, ordered to pay $150,000 in restitution to me, repairs, pain and suffering, legal fees, and a $50,000 civil penalty payable to the county for misuse of HOA authority. The three hired men pleaded guilty to impersonating an officer and attempted grand theft. Each received prison time and restitution obligations. The HOA itself fractured. Board members resigned. Civil suits multiplied. Bylaws were rewritten, and a court-appointed receiver took control while members voted in new leadership. My civil suit for harassment and damages settled. $75,000 plus attorney fees. Sandra's home went into lien and sale to satisfy judgments. I backed up the footage in 3 separate places and deleted nothing. I stayed in the house. The Porsche stayed in the driveway. They thought I was just another neighbor they could intimidate. They didn't know I was a U.S. Marshal, and they sure as hell learned. You don't send fake cops to take what isn't yours. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe my channel.